subscribe and click the notification bell to creepy up your life. Living on the countryside, or even just living out of the way of other people, it can be so nice and relaxing. But what happens when it's not people who encroach on your land, but something of your worst nightmares? A subscriber by the alias of Bouncing Brick shares a terrifying ongoing experience with us because they don't go near the field at night anymore, as doing so may just cost them their life. If you want to hear your story in an episode of Darkness Prevails, share it with us at darknessprevails.org. Specifically, I'm looking for ghost stories and monster sightings from Ireland. Also, be sure to check out my podcast at anchor.fm/darknessprevails for an easy and convenient way to catch up on my content. But remember, all the newest episodes will appear on YouTube. I've had a number of strange experiences since I moved to the country in central Wisconsin, but this one is by far the most terrifying. This place used to be an operating farm. We are surrounded by fields and woods. Across the road to the east is a large field where I used to go to get good views of the night sky. There are old barns and sheds in the yard that my landlord just uses for storage now. The biggest barn, the one in the northeast quadrant of the yard, has always given me the creeps, especially at night. All of us just naturally avoid going near it, even during the day. Between the barn and the road to the east, there's a fair amount of clear lawn, but it's just an unspoken rule that we don't go over there unless absolutely necessary, because it just feels wrong. This first experience wasn't as bad, but I feel it's important to mention, as it's likely that it is connected to the next one. It was the middle of the 2017 winter, and I had just gotten home from Taekwondo. It was only about 8 or 9 p.m. I stepped out of my car and opened the back door to grab my school stuff, along with my sparring gear. At first, I thought everything was normal, until I heard a sound. It was like a ticking-ish sound, which I assumed was fine, because my car made that noise while cooling off all the time. But then I realized that this ticking sound was not coming from my car, and it began to pick up pace. It quickly turned into what sounded like a growl. It was coming from the far side of that barn, the creepy old barn. Then it became snarling. Needless to say, fearing for my safety, I dropped everything, slammed the car door, and bolted inside the house. Now, we have coyotes and foxes around here, but they stay far, far away from any houses, well, usually. But that growl, it was way too deep and loud to be a coyote. Even still, I tried my best to convince myself that that's all it was. Now, on to the following summer. I'd gotten myself a telescope for Christmas, since nothing excites me more than astronomy, and I brought a friend over so we could use it to look at some nebulae, and maybe even the 4 planets that were supposed to be visible that night. The sky was clear, and it was the perfect temperature for some observations. It was about 10 or 11 o'clock. First, we took the telescope into the backyard, but we could not get a good view of Mars from there, due to the nearby tree cover. So we decided to go to the east field, across the street. It was free of trees over there, and as I said earlier, offered an amazing view of the sky. I picked up the telescope, and my friend went ahead of me, watching for dog piles in the yard, so I wouldn't step in a pile of yuck. We walked up the driveway towards the road. Halfway across the road, we began to hear something that made us stop in our tracks. It was this demented mix between a growl, a hiss, and a snarl. It was coming from the ditch nearby. This sound made me jump backwards with the telescope still in my arms. My friend cursed under her breath before dashing back a few meters. I was frozen in the middle of the road, staring at the spot where the sound had originated from. She grabbed my arm, saying, "Go, start walking. I'll watch your back." Her grip on my arm was so tight, it snapped me out of my trance. Steadily, I turned back toward the house, speed walking as fast as possible now, without dropping the telescope. Halfway down the driveway, I heard my friend harshly whisper, "Oh my God, Alaric, there are eyes there. I see eyes in that ditch." I paused at this to look over my shoulder and see what she was talking about. And sure enough, there were eyes reflecting a yellowish silver, staring at us from that ditch. We got inside safely and shut the curtains. We did not want to see what that thing actually was. That field is long, and near the far end, it slopes downward pretty drastically. I've been out there enough times to know this pretty well. Anyway, that night I had to take my friend home. But as you could probably guess, we did not want to leave the house again. As we ran at full speed to my car, she stayed behind me, clutching tightly to my sweater, which is extremely uncharacteristic of her. She was almost as petrified as I was. As I turned my car around in the driveway, she said it again. "Those eyes are out there. It's still watching us." As I neared the edge of the driveway, I saw what she was talking about. Farther back in the field, those same eyes, somehow brighter than before, were looking back at us. I stopped the car at the end of the driveway as it continued to stare us down. The creature was far back in that field. Based on the sloping of the field and just how high above the ground the eyes appeared, this creature was 8 or 9 feet from the ground, and as there was nothing to climb on there, this animal, this monster, was tall, with unrealistically large yellow-silver eyes. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen. As we stared at it, the eyes quickly lowered. It only took us a few seconds to see that the creature was coming closer to us. As I hit the gas, we saw the way its eyes moved. They moved in a figure-8 pattern, the way something does if it's lumbering on 2 large legs. That gait of a massive weight shifting left, then right, as it approached. I had never been so afraid at my own home. We floored it out of the driveway. I took my friend home, and I didn't come back home myself until daylight. What's worse about this is that later on, when it began to snow, I started to find huge footprints in the snow near my house. These prints are definitely not human. They're way bigger than human prints would be, and they do not match the prints of any animal that I've seen. Just the other night, I saw those prints near our barn. They walked across the driveway, and they stopped near my front door before going back the way they came. Every time I come home at night, I find myself repeating a mantra of, "Please don't see it. Please don't let me see it," while obsessively watching, staring at the field. I never want to see this thing's face, but those prints are getting closer every day. I feel like I'm going to have to see it soon, whether I like it or not. Needless to say, I do not go near my field at night anymore.